I am about to expose an $8 trillion secret that the banks hopes you never discover. And once you hear it, you will understand why the people who truly run this system would prefer that you stay distracted, tired, and confused about how money works. Because the moment you understand this strategy, the moment you see how it quietly shapes the wealth of the richest families in the country, everything about your financial life will look different. What I want to show you is not a trick and not some illegal loophole. It is a structure built right into the system, used openly by billionaires, CEOs, and people with the right advisors. And yet, most ordinary people will live their entire lives without anyone even whispering that such a strategy exists. And the reason this happens is simple. You are trained to operate in a completely different money system than the people at the top. You are taught to think in terms of income, not assets. You are trained to work for money, not to make money work for you. And today, I want you to hear how they designed this entire system in a way that keeps workers paying the taxes while owners quietly grow wealth that the government and banks cannot touch. So make sure to stay until the end, leave a like, and let's start with the part almost nobody understands. When you hear that the ultra-wealthy pay almost no income tax, most people think it is because they're cheating or hiding something. But the truth is far more disturbing than that. They are not hiding anything at all. They are simply using the code exactly as it was written. The tax code is designed to aggressively tax income, not wealth. And the people at the top do not focus on earning income. They focus on owning assets that grow in value. Inside the top 0.05% of U.S. households, there is more than $8.5 trillion sitting in something called unrealized capital gains. And if you expand the lens to the entire top 1%, the number jumps above $20 trillion. And yet, the government cannot tax any of it. These numbers look impossible, so let me break it down in the simplest way imaginable. Imagine you bought something for $1. And while you held it without doing anything at all, it rose in value until it was worth $20 trillion. As long as you never sell it, you owe zero taxes, not 1 cent. The value can rise and rise for decades, and no matter how high it climbs, the IRS cannot touch it. Because in this system, you are only taxed when you turn growth into income, not while it grows silently in the background. The wealthy understand this better than anyone else. They know workers get taxed when they earn a paycheck, but owners get taxed only when they sell. And the wealthy do not sell. They buy assets and let them rise. They let the value snowball until their wealth grows so large that it stops looking like numbers and starts looking like an entirely different universe than the one most people live in. And the system makes this divide even larger when you introduce debt into the picture, because the wealthy figured out something that feels like it should be illegal, even though it is completely allowed. They discovered that they can access the value of those assets without selling them. They do it by borrowing against them, and loan money is not taxable. So imagine how powerful that becomes. You own assets that rise in value. You never sell them. You borrow against them. You pay no tax, and you keep repeating the cycle. And this is the part that makes people's jaw drop when they hear it for the first time. Debt and taxes are the two pillars that keep America running, and yet the wealthy use one to escape the other. They use debt to bypass taxes entirely. And nothing about this is accidental. The system was built this way. You are not supposed to learn it in school. You are not supposed to be heard about it from your employer. You are not supposed to be trained to think like an owner. You are supposed to be trained to work, earn, pay taxes, and repeat. Meanwhile, the wealthy hire armies of accountants, attorneys, and advisors whose only job is to keep their taxes at zero and their assets. What I want to do for you is break this strategy down in a way anyone can understand, because many parts of it are accessible to ordinary people long before they ever become wealthy. The strategy is known as buy, borrow, die. And even though it sounds dramatic, the idea behind it is surprisingly simple. It begins with a mindset shift so powerful that it flips your entire relationship with money. You stop thinking about income as the goal. You start thinking about ownership as the goal. Because income is taxed, ownership is not. When Elon Musk received what became known as a trillion-dollar compensation package, almost none of it was income, it was equity. And equity does not trigger taxes the way wages do. Many CEOs take a $1 salary for the same reason. They are not interested in earning money that gets taxed. They are interested in receiving assets that rise in value without being touched by the IRS. I want you to think about your own money for a second. Every time you earn interest from a bank account, you get taxed. Every time you receive a dividend, you get taxed. Every time you sell something for a profit, you get taxed. But if those assets simply rise in value, you owe nothing. If a stock goes from $10 to $100, you owe nothing. If a property gains $200,000 in value, you owe nothing. The wealthy structure their entire financial lives around this principle. They do not chase income, they buy assets that grow. And here is where the second part of the strategy becomes critical. Once your assets grow, you never sell them. The moment you sell, the government steps in and takes its cut. That is why the top 0.05% have more than $8 trillion sitting in gains they have never realized. They buy, they hold, they wait, and the value grows. And while most people think this is something only billionaires can do, the truth is that anyone can start with this mindset. If you buy assets you plan to hold long-term, you avoid triggering taxes. If you avoid constant flipping, selling, and trading, you keep more of your gains compounding quietly in the background. But the real magic of this strategy appears when you understand the borrowing piece. When you borrow money, you are not receiving income, you are receiving loan proceeds, and loan proceeds are not taxable. So imagine buying a property for $200,000. It rises to $500,000. Instead of selling it, you borrow $300,000 against it. That $300,000 is tax-free. You can use it to improve the property, buy more assets, or do anything else. The wealthy do this with real estate, with stocks, with business equity. As long as the asset rises in value, they can borrow against it again and again, almost like creating their own private bank that grows larger with every passing year. Of course, borrowing money comes with interest, and most people think interest is a burden, but the wealthy see interest as a tool. Interest can be deducted as a business expense, reducing taxable income elsewhere. It also allows you to keep your money invested instead of selling it. If your $1,000,000 investment continues to grow while you borrow against it, the math often works out in your favor even after interest costs. The wealthy understand this deeply. They are not afraid of using debt strategically because they know debt allows them to access their wealth while keeping their assets untouched and growing. And then comes the final part of this strategy, the part that feels almost unreal when you first hear it. When the wealthy die, their heirs inherit these assets with something called a step-up in basis. That means the cost basis resets to the market value at the time of death, which means all the gains from all those years, sometimes decades, disappear for tax purposes. The heirs owe nothing. The family keeps everything, and the cycle continues into the next generation. When you first hear that families can hold assets for decades, borrow against them again and again, avoid taxes the entire time, and then let their heirs inherit everything without paying a cent on all that accumulated growth, it almost sounds like fiction. But this is exactly how many of the wealthiest people in the country preserve their fortunes. And the surprising part is that they are not doing anything secret or hidden.
They are simply using the system as it was built. And once you begin to understand this, once you truly see the structure beneath the surface, you start realizing that wealth in this country is not simply earned, it is engineered. It is shaped through choices that most people never knew they had. And although most individuals may not reach the heights of billionaires, the principles themselves are usable long before someone becomes wealthy. The mistake is believing that this strategy only works at the top. It starts working the very moment you choose to act like an owner rather than a worker. Think for a moment about one of the biggest obstacles people face when they try to build wealth. They sell too early. They sell in fear. They sell because they think they need the money. They sell because nobody ever explained that selling triggers taxes and cuts your compounding in half. But the moment you start thinking differently, the moment you tell yourself that the real goal is to hold, to accumulate, to let things rise so slowly that you barely notice it until one day you wake up and realize your assets are worth far more than you ever expected, you begin to understand why this system works so well for the people who stay patient. The wealthy did not become wealthy by trading all day. They became wealthy by owning. And owning is what gives them the power to borrow, and borrowing is what lets them live without ever having to sell anything. The reason this matters so much is because the way most people imagine wealth building's backwards. They picture making more income as the solution. They imagine working harder, getting promotions, taking extra jobs, chasing higher wages, but income is the part the tax system punishes. Every extra dollar you earn is taxed, but every extra dollar your assets gain is not. And so the person working 2 jobs might think they are doing everything right. The person saving their paychecks might feel like they are on the right track. Yet the person who simply buys assets and lets them grow without selling, without realizing gains, ends up paying less tax and building more wealth. The math is not even close. The system rewards one type of behavior and penalizes the other. Imagine you own a portfolio of stocks that slowly climbs in value over 20 or 30 years. You never touch it, you never sell. Your gains accumulate quietly, and your tax bill remains zero. Eventually, that portfolio may be large enough that a lender feels comfortable offering you a line of credit. You take that credit, use the money however you like, and pay no tax, because it is a loan. The lender is happy because your assets act as collateral. You are happy because your assets continue to grow untouched, and the government cannot intervene because nothing taxable has happened. For most people, this sounds like a fantasy, but it is not. It is the foundation of a financial system that treats ownership differently from labor. And it does not stop with stocks. Real estate works the same way, sometimes even better because lenders love the predictable nature of property. You buy a home or an investment property, its value rises over the years. Instead of selling it, you refinance or take out a home equity line of credit. Suddenly, you have access to tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars tax-free. If the property keeps appreciating, you can repeat the process again and again. Most people only think about debt in the context of hardship. They borrow because they are struggling. But wealthy people borrow because their money is working so effectively that they never want to interrupt its growth. To them, selling an asset is the last thing they would ever consider. Selling would mean triggering taxes, shrinking their compounding power, and losing control over the engine that keeps building their wealth. This is also where people misunderstand interest. They see interest as a cost that takes away from their earnings, but the wealthy.
When someone passes away, their assets receive a step-up in basis. This is one of the most powerful features of the tax code. It resets the value of the assets for tax purposes to their market value at death. So if someone bought a property for $200,000 and it is worth $800,000 when they die, their heirs do not inherit the $600,000 of taxable gains. That gain simply vanishes in the eyes of the tax system. The heirs can sell the property immediately and owe no capital gains tax, or they can hold the property and continue the same strategy. And this is why some families grow wealth across generations, while others struggle to keep what they earn. It is not always about how much money they make, but about how they structure what they own. Now think about how powerful this becomes when combined with a lifetime of borrowing. Imagine a person holds a portfolio worth several $1,000,000. Over the years, they have borrowed against it to fund their lifestyle, to buy more assets, to expand their business, to live comfortably without ever paying tax on the money they used. When they die, the loans are settled through the estate and the assets are passed down with a fresh cost basis. The heirs inherit wealth that has never been touched by taxes on the appreciation. The strategy completes its cycle: buy, borrow, die. And while most people hear this and think it is unreachable, the truth is that the mindset behind it is usable long before someone becomes wealthy. The strategy does not require millions to begin. It only requires that you stop selling every time you need money. It requires that you start acting like someone who owns rather than someone who trades. You can start by buying assets you intend to hold. You can start by choosing appreciation-focused investments instead of constantly chasing quick gains. You can start by realizing that debt, when used carefully and conservatively, can be a tool rather than a trap. And you can start by avoiding the constant cycle of buying and selling that drains taxes and interrupts compounding. Every time you sell something, you break the chain. Every time you hold, you strengthen it. And the longer that chain remains unbroken, the more powerful your compounding becomes. Even modest assets can grow into meaningful wealth when left alone long enough. The key is resisting the urge to interrupt the process. If you look closely, you will notice that people who build real wealth do not spend their lives reacting to every dip or volatility spike. They do not let temporary fluctuations scare them into selling. They understand that the true engine of wealth is time, patience, and ownership. And even though these ideas sound simple, they are the exact opposite of how most people behave with their money. Most people think wealth is built through effort, but wealth is built through structure, through patience, through choosing to act by design rather than by emotion. The strategy may sound intimidating at first, but at its heart, it is simply about letting your money stay where it grows best and not letting taxes erode its potential. You buy assets, you let them rise, you avoid selling, you use borrowing as a bridge when you need liquidity. You hold your assets long enough for compounding to do the heavy lifting. You let your heirs benefit from the step up in basis, and the result is a pattern of wealth that can stretch far beyond a single lifetime. It is a pattern the wealthy rely on because it works, because it is legal, and because the tax system rewards it. The truth is simple. The system was never designed to reward labor the way it rewards ownership. But once you realize that, once you understand how the game is actually played, you can begin making choices that align with the way wealth is created in the real world. You do not need to become a billionaire to use the same principles. You only need to stop interrupting your own growth. Thank you for watching. If you found this eye-opening, subscribe to the channel and continue learning the strategies that can change your financial life. And when you're ready to take the next step, click on the next video and keep going. See you soon. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only, and any results depend on your own decisions and actions.